Hello and welcome to the Developer Spotlight, where smart growth founder and real estate entrepreneur Chris Porto interviews top real estate developers from around the world. Chris explores their philosophies, their success mindsets, their career paths, and how their work is contributing to a sustainable future. And most importantly, how you and I, the next generation of real estate developers, can start building wealth in this business right now. Chris, hey, this is an auspicious occasion, and it's wonderful to be here with you launching the Developer Spotlight.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. I'm really excited about this next step in my evolution to promote development, promote sustainable development, and be having conversations about what it takes to actually be successful as a developer and how to actually create the change that we need in the world.
Beautiful. All right, well, so this is episode 0, so what we really want to just give all of you, our audience, a sense of what this podcast is about and why Chris is starting it. So Chris, can you just give some context, some broad context? What's the inspiration behind this podcast and what can our listeners expect to hear and learn?
Sure. So my path as a developer was one of which where I had no experience in real estate. So I had to basically pick up books and join courses and programs to essentially teach myself how to actually get into the real estate development game. And I found that networking with other developers was one of the best ways that I could pursue to understand how other people have gotten successful in this line of work. Right. So my hope with a session like this is to just capture the conversations that I have with other developers that I admire for the type of development that they've been successful at carrying out. So essentially, this podcast, in my mind, is dedicated to motivating, educating, and inspiring the next generation of real estate developers. And ideally, those developers that are focused on smart growth, which is a whole development philosophy that will be threaded throughout the conversations that I have with other developers, as well as other people that I might talk to, or the concepts that I might talk about in terms of the needs that our society has in, growing in a sustainable way.
So can you give us just a few sentences of what is smart growth?
So smart growth is a development philosophy that essentially seeks to orient density, residential or commercial density, in areas where they're oriented towards transit lines. So the idea is to basically build up rather than build out, and build in such a way where it has a diversity in all aspects of the community that's manifesting through the forms that are created, by way of actually the built structures, and to be dedicated to activating that environment with people, with life, as opposed to urban sprawl, which has been, at least in America, I'd say a negative trend overall over the past 100 years, especially with the advent of the car.
Houston's a great example of that just recently, isn't it?
Exactly. And so this movement towards decentralizing our urban environments in the name of freedom, in the name of space, and it's kind of gutted out a lot of the connection that we have as a society, in my belief. And so both from a social desirability as well as an environmental sustainability move, we need to, be less dependent on our automobiles and come back into the city, come back together in a more vibrant urban environment where we've already allocated the land in those areas to, urban life, as opposed to spreading out and taking up new greenfield development where, nature is kind of at peace and shouldn't necessarily be disturbed, because then you're basically just creating an environment that people have to drive towards or drive to and from, and they spend a lot more time in their vehicles as opposed to with one another. Right.
Okay, so why should people listen to you? What's your background, both in terms of sustainability, because it's it's clear that you have a vision. There's a vision in forming this podcast, and it's kind of implicit in what you're saying, a sort of enlightened development context. But then also, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. But then also, there's other dimensions of this that have to do with, as you discussed earlier, the next generation of real estate developers, and really tapping into the existing kind of strata of successful developers and how they've built wealth, and how you aim to help the next generation do the same.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
No, those are two big questions.
They're huge questions.
You only have another 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
But be good.
Essentially, my trajectory in my whole career has been focused on sustainability and addressing climate change. I kind of took a step back before jumping into my career and kind of identified climate change as one of the most important issues of our time, and trying to figure out how I can pursue both my own wealth and my own and pursuing a motive that I naturally have. Maybe it's because of my cultural conditioning of where I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., but this desire to want to make money and create value in the world to get correlatedly compensated for that value, and yet do something that brings us back into alignment with nature, right? And pursuing development, pursuing real estate in particular, just because real estate has been the largest vehicle for creating wealth in our whole society, really. When you step back and examine it. So everything that I did early on in my career was more focused on carbon accounting. I was basically calculating the carbon footprint for these major corporations, a big portion of which was their real estate portfolio.
Right.
And then I started realizing that we needed to actually power this real estate with clean energy. So I ended up shifting and getting into solar energy. I joined a solar energy developer. And then I actually integrated my finance degree in my undergrad with solar energy. So I was basically raising capital for large-scale solar energy projects throughout the country. And with them, I was there for a couple years and really enjoyed that experience. Got a lot of good experience doing financial modeling and deal structuring and capital raising, all in the name of trying to put assets in place in society that were contributing towards the solution. In this case, it was just simply generating more clean energy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was not totally satisfied, because I wanted to, at the end of the day, build my own wealth as well as take on projects that move the needle forward. So as an employee, I wasn't really getting that satisfaction by contributing towards the cause, but not really necessarily building my own wealth.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, I decided to, learn how to actually make money in real estate, and set out on my own as an entrepreneur with the intention of founding a company that, again, was focused on sustainable real estate development.
Yeah.
And so smart growth, I come across this notion of this type of development that at the end of the day integrated solar, which is where I was already in already, but it basically integrated it with the real estate that could also have a social mission too, whether it's housing or whether it's office space or retail, or really at the end of the day, our whole society is built with real estate. So
right.
Understanding how our external physical environment manifests in society by way of our own intentions as a people started to become really fascinating to me. And if I could make money pursuing projects that adhered to all of these smart growth principles, it was kind of, in my mind, would be an ideal situation where I could really align my whole energy, my whole being behind helping to achieve this mission, as you alluded to.
Yeah, this is great. So in your description, you're talking about we're going to interview these developers and look across the profile of their work. You're going to explore their different projects. You're going to explore their own personal trajectories, how they got into it, how they've been building wealth. But in addition to that, I think it seems like another significant thing to add to this picture, which I'd like you to speak to, and then we can wrap up, is you, at the same time, you're also now already teaching the next generation how to do this through your Developers Academy. Mm-hmm. Can you say a little bit about that? What is your Developers Academy, and what are you doing with that?
So the Developer Academy is essentially my attempt to solidify everything that I've learned to date in terms of how to actually build a real estate development company and take on projects that are financially profitable, that are environmentally sustainable, and that are socially oriented. So the people that I am taking through this Developer Academy are essentially getting all the tools and a complete understanding of the business model required to successfully carry out, these types of projects. Mm-hmm. I felt like I had to piece together, the whole picture of what a real estate development company is all about, primarily from two different sources. One was the real estate investing group that I joined called Fortune Builders. And they basically taught me how to be a real estate entrepreneur, but basically just focusing on single family homes, kind of like the typical entry point into real estate for most people. Right. Then on the other side, I joined the Urban Land Institute, or ULI, which is the largest association for real estate developers, and that essentially publishes all of the textbooks that most people who are interested in real estate development end up studying. And I consumed numerous textbooks from them and actually went through a professional certificate program that they had for real estate development. They have since closed that program. But there are other education avenues like graduate programs, but most of the time it's an academic understanding that they're conveying to people interested in this field and not necessarily entrepreneurship. And so I feel like I have a really good intersection from starting out at ground zero when it comes to real estate, and my own balance sheet for that matter, and then actually understanding the academic notion of what it takes to actually carry out real estate development projects, and kind of fusing them together to give people a better understanding of how they could either scale up their business from doing kind of the residential fix and flip type of investments, or people who just understand the development process and want to actually start doing their own deals. So those are kind of the two of the main threads that I'm kind of bringing to the table. And I want to basically share with people the experience that I've had in trying to understand what this whole world is all about. And if I can teach people how to actually be successful in real estate development, period, let alone the type of development that they're pursuing, by informing them about this larger smart growth vision, I think that I can educate people and get people into projects that are, again, increasing their own net worth and cash flow and achieving the type of change that we need in our society all at the same time.
Beautiful. Before we wrap up, where can people tune in to get the next episode of the podcast? And if they're interested, where can they tune in to learn more about your Developer Academy?
So we're going to have this, from my understanding, on iTunes as well as YouTube to listen to the episodes. The website is smartgrowth.co. We'll probably be coming up with more dedicated websites, but for now, people can go on to the website, the main website there, and understand what we've been pursuing to date in terms of our own projects, the movement at large, and the rest of the content that we're putting out there with this podcast in particular, as well as the Developer Academy that we were talking about.
Great. Well, I can't wait for episode 1.
Definitely. I'm super excited. This first episode is with one of the main mentors that I found here in Oakland, California, that really kind of was very gracious in his time and his energy to share with me his experience about how he has gotten to where he's gotten and developing hundreds of residential units in Oakland here. And he's just a really great guy. So I'm excited to have people listen into the conversation that we had because it was very fruitful.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for episode 0, our launch episode. And Chris, this sounds awesome. This is going to be a great show. I already know it. I have a little insight from behind the curtain because I'm editing the first episode already. It is really fantastic. So everyone stay tuned for episode 1 coming your way soon. Thanks so much.